Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is Listening Beyond the Soundbite. A very special guest this evening, Barbara Winters, who has got a very long title, Certified Brain Injury Specialist Trainer. Barb, welcome to the show.
Thank you,
Barb
Pat.
is with the Brain Injury Association of Vermont, and tonight we are discussing, for me anyway, a difficult topic. It's brain injury. And it's a two-part show. Barbara will be our first guest, and then I will have Mirabai Rose Isaac, who is a brain injury survivor and a friend of mine. So it'll be a very interesting show. Barbara, we always ask folks to talk a little bit about themselves and how you came to be working for the Brain Injury Association of Vermont.
The Brain Injury Association of Vermont was started back in 1999 by a survivor who felt like there weren't any resources to help him. He was a very high-functioning survivor who had some resources, and so he went to the National Brain Injury Association and said, how do I do something in Vermont?
Great.
And that's how the chapter was started, and he asked me to be on that board. So I was on that board right from the get-go, and because when I did my occupational therapy field work, I really wanted it to be in brain injury. And my fieldwork coordinator said, no, you don't want brain injury. This is back in 1998. And I said, yeah, I do. I fell in love with the brain during my anatomy and physiology, and I really want to work in that area. Brain injury has come a long way, but back then it had a tremendous stigma. It still does. You know, people, when they hear brain injury, they just kind of shrink away. But it's gotten much better. We've got a lot more knowledge thanks to the football players and the military.
The veterans, coming back.
Yes. So those two kind of audiences have really increased knowledge.
Right.
But there's still a lot.
Well, you told me the one reason that you were interested in brain injury is because there's hope.
Yes.
And could you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm certainly going to ask Mirabai about that, about having hope.
Yeah. So with brain injury, there's three messages I want people to listen to take home from me. And one is that there's hope. Two is that there is that there's always healing that can happen. And that every brain injury is totally unique. So if Mirabai's journey is her own journey.
Right.
Her brain injury is different from another person's brain injury. And so don't lump everybody with a brain injury into one big pool. They're different. So every brain injury is unique. There's always hope because the brain has incredible, what we now call neuroplasticity. It continues to heal. You know, we're growing new neurons into our 90s.
Thank God. Sometimes I think we're losing them.
Well, we do.
Yeah, we do.
All the time.
So how many, we talked before the show about how many brain injuries we've identified in Vermont, because you said that was hard to actually get a solid number.
Yeah. So since then, I looked at the State Department of Health has done a survey, and approximately 5,000 people every year, every year new brain injuries, go to hospitals and emergency rooms. And that's the only place that data is collected. Now, there's a lot of brain injuries that are not ever reported for a lot of reasons. One may be that a person is a victim of domestic abuse, and there's a lot of reasons why people don't report. And the other is that people go, oh, it's no big deal.
Exactly.
Until later on, and they start having problems.
Right. So this is a basic question. What is the definition of brain injury?
Good.
Because I started out our conversation by calling it traumatic brain injury, and you said no, the overarching umbrella is brain injury.
Yes, we're the Brain Injury Association, not the Traumatic Brain Injury Association, because the umbrella definition is acquired brain injury. And there's two categories. One is traumatic, and the other is non-traumatic. So the traumatic brain injuries are what we think of as, that's an external insult to the brain. So that's the football players' heads hitting. That is the head hitting the windshield of the car. That's the gunshot wounds. That's external insults. Then brain injuries are also internal insults. That's people who have strokes, people who have encephalitis, almost drowning. Causes the brain to have a lack of oxygen, which causes brain injury. Anytime that you mess with the brain, like to do surgery on a tumor, there's probably some damage done. So tumors, metabolic disorders,
like lead poisoning, or is
and also metal. So that's also kind of the neurotoxins, like lead. Kids that chew on lead in the dirt, from peeling paint, old paint. That can cause a brain injury, and that's ABI.
Yeah, and the one you mentioned before, which is part of this, is adverse childhood experiences, which is part of the ACEs discussion. But parents can create this situation in their kids, right?
Well, so if ACEs, adverse childhood events, are an interesting category. We know by studies that the brain is changed. Now, is that brain damage? It hasn't quite risen to that level of being called brain damage, but certainly there's brain changes that the child would have developed. Maybe the brain would have developed a little differently than if they'd not been impacted by things like continued abuse, trauma, that kind of adverse childhood event.
Wonder how many are out there. It's very sad to think about this, isn't it?
Is
it something that's noticeable in school, and is that something that's reportable? If I mean, there are mandatory reporting requirements if you
suspect.
But how would you prove that anyway?
Well, whenever you start talking like the protective agencies, a child protective agency or adult protective agency, you have to have proof.
Right, of course.
But as a reporter, all you have to do is suspect. It's up to the agencies. And in fact, you're mandated if you suspect. If you're a mandated reporter, like as an occupational therapist, if I suspect that there's abuse, I am mandated to report it.
Interesting. Well, it would be a terrible place to be in, isn't it? My God.
Yeah.
So, but I read in some of the material you sent me that the brain does heal if you give it the right attention, which is why you were talking about hope. And I am asking, the question is probably obvious, but how much does hope play in somebody's recovery? I mean, if they have hope that things are going to get better, that must play a dramatic role. It's an attitude, mindset.
Mind-body connection cannot be misstated. It's incredibly important. So sure, having a positive attitude, the people that I've seen really thrive are people who are just like, oh, this isn't going to beat me. But here's the other thing. There's been lots of studies about resiliency. Why do a lot of the Department of Defense has done a lot of this because of the fact they have two individuals in a Humvee go over an IED, explosive device. They get all rattled around. One gets a concussion, the other doesn't, whatever, but the one gets PTSD and one doesn't. Why is that?
Interesting.
And so they've done a lot of studies on resiliency, and one of the factors is a good support system. So if somebody has a good support system, it really
helps
changes the picture.
Now, is there, we're obviously talking, there's not such a thing as one size fits all. And is there a gradation of brain injury? I mean, is there some kind of a level of, like we talk breast cancer, stage 1, 2, 3, 4. Is there such a thing for brain injuries?
What the brain injury world does is they divide it into mild, moderate, and severe. And the mild brain injury is 90% or 75% of the brain injuries. The moderate brain injuries are about 10 to 15%, and the severe is, definitely the lesser category. Thank goodness. But those labels are labels that are diagnostic labels. They are not outcome labels. A person with a quote-unquote mild brain injury can have as many problems as a person with a moderate brain injury, and we don't know why. Again, every brain is different.
I think you lost me on that one. I'm sorry. Could you?
So people take these labels, mild, moderate, severe, and they say, oh, that's outcome. The person with a mild brain injury is going to be fine. The person with a moderate brain injury is going to have a lot of trouble. And in fact, it could be the
Oh, I
reverse.
see. Okay, right.
So it just, take it as a label. 90% of the individuals with mild brain injury, which is concussion is a mild brain injury,
Right, sure.
resolves within anywhere from weeks to months. But there are those 10% can go
Right.
on and maybe have lifetime issues
right.
from a quote unquote mild brain injury. Believe me, people have said it does not feel mild. If
Right, if you're the
if
person,
you're the
I'm
person.
sure it
And
doesn't.
the other thing is that it's an invisible injury. You know, you look it's fine, you sound fine. I mean, yes, some people may have speech issues or balance or, you know, but there's a lot of people walking around that you'd have no idea
Right,
have a brain injury.
That they're struggling and
They're really,
they've learned how to deal with it, or
some have,
uh-huh.
and some have resorted. The reason to get people help sooner versus later is that if they don't learn how to deal with it, might turn to anesthetizing themselves, to drugs, and
Right.
that's a huge issue. And depression is a huge issue,
Right,
because I'm not who I used to be.
right.
I can't do what I used to do, and so there's those things that they have to they have to move through it. The Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stages of dying
Oh, right,
they've kind of adapted that for individuals with brain injury. And the
Right.
first one's denial.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem.
right.
So
I'm fine.
I'm fine, no problem.
Right,
And so working through all those stages is really important.
right. Well, there must be counseling. We didn't talk much about the Brain Injury Association, but what is your function there? Do you deal directly with people with brain injury? Do you counsel them? I know you do a lot of education.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do a lot of education. So the Brain Injury Association is a small statewide nonprofit organization, a 501c3. And what we do is that we have the primary thing we do is the helpline, which is the toll-free number 877-856-1772. And that number is, you can call it, and if I'm not at a meeting, I will be there to answer
Great.
it. But we'll always return your message if you leave a message.
And what kind of calls for help would you get?
Let me see. Housing is a very transportation.
Right,
How do I get from point A to point
Right.
B? And just basic questions about how do I deal with this? Or it could be a family member saying, you know, how do
how
I
do they
help?
help?
How do they help more?
Right.
What can they do? Or it could be a professional saying, I've got a student with a brain injury. How do I better
Right.
help them? So
Are
it's a
there
variety.
counselors specializing in brain injury here in Vermont?
Vermont is
Excuse
so
me.
small that
Right.
in the bigger states, the more populated states, yes. In Vermont, they can't make a living specializing just in brain
Right.
injury.
Right.
So we certainly have counselors that I keep a list. If people tell me this counselor really helped me, they got it, because
Yeah.
it's really important that they get it. Because otherwise, what a counselor would do is go, "Oh, you're depressed.
Right,
You don't have much expression on your face. Oh, you're depressed."
right.
Rather than it being a brain issue that's a very common. The affect is flat,
Oh, really?
and so it looks like depression. So, but it isn't.
Huh.
It's that the brain has lost its ability to generate
Right,
expression.
right.
Has to relearn it.
Wow. Interesting. So I know there is a document. You wrote a document that's entitled "What Brain Injury Survivors Want You to Know," and
Yeah.
I would love for you to go through some of the highlights. Is this available on your website at all? Is it available somewhere?
It is actually, anybody can call or email, and my email is braininfo, and then the number 1 at B as in boy, I, A, V as in Victor, T.org. Braininfo1 at BIAVT.
This is a great document. If you want it, please take Barbara up on her offer,
Yeah.
because it just, go through some of them.
Okay.
It's just 2 pages, and I read the whole thing. It's amazing.
It is. And brain injury survivors say, oh, this is wonderful. I will
great.
hand it to my family member. So one of the things, this is found on brainline.org, which is a wonderful website. And all you have to do is when you get in brainline.org is search for Barbara Webster,
Oh, okay.
who wrote it. And she's got a lot of different pieces there.
Right.
So I need more rest than I used to. I'm not being lazy. And fatigue is a huge issue. My stamina fluctuates, even though I look all better. So an individual can be doing just fine, and all of a sudden they shut down.
Oh.
Their brain just says, okay,
I'm
that's it.
done.
I'm done. I'm done.
Right.
And they are just, you'll be talking to them and they'll go blank.
Well, I'm sure if the brain, I did not sleep at a Holiday Inn, whatever that commercial is, but I'm sure the brain needs rest to rejuvenate, doesn't it? So the
does.
more rest, the more the brain cells can get busy rejuvenating, right?
Yep, you can be strategic about your rest for sure, but we all need,
Right, for sure.
lots of
Right,
rest.
right.
But an individual with a brain injury, if they've gone back to work, may need to take a lot of breaks.
Right.
So, and then they're saying if there's more than one person talking, I may seem uninterested in the conversation. But what is happening is that they cannot listen to more than one person at a time.
Right.
So it's not them being rude or uninterested, they just simply can't attend to that. Patience is the best gift you can give them. So their brain has got to work around the damaged areas. So if you say, how are you today?
Thinking.
I'm fine.
Oh, I see.
The brain
Right.
has to go, what's that question? What is she asking? Especially if it's an abstract question like, how are you? That's really abstract.
Right.
So,
Interesting. Right.
so if they're in that concrete thinking stage where everything is very concrete,
Right.
you can ask them, are you feeling good today? And they can say a yes or no, but the how are you is
Oh, that
so
just opens
vague.
it right up.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. That's
So
interesting.
that gets tough for the brain.
Yeah.
And then just don't be condescending. A lot of people, when people are blind, all of a sudden people start talking to them really loudly
Yeah, right,
because
to make up for whatever. Right, exactly.
So just be understanding that yes, their brain may be damaged. They are still intelligent.
Right.
They're not. Some people think they're being stupid, but they aren't.
Yeah.
And they're rigid. If they seem rigid, it's because they need structure. Structure is what enables them to survive. If their brain is having to work all the time around a lot of different schedules and people.
Oh, I see. So uniformed. We do this today. We do that.
Yeah.
No surprises.
No
Yeah,
surprises.
interesting.
For some people, it's really,
Yeah,
really hard.
right.
So understanding that. And one of the things that don't interrupt them to keep giving them directions, don't fill in words for them.
Right.
Patience.
I do that with everybody, so that's a bad thing I do.
I know. And they need cheerleaders. They really do need cheerleaders. So encourage them and don't be negative.
Right.
And that gets tough sometimes.
Well, you told me that there's not much or a lot of continued support for these people, which if you could explain that, and then we can continue on with this, but that would fit right in here. I was surprised, because this is Vermont. We do, for the most part, take care of those who are in need.
We do.
But you said that Medicaid care, I get them confused, Medicaid.
It depends. So an individual that does not qualify for like Medicaid,
Right,
they fall out of a lot of programs. They can't do the program that's called Choices for Care, which
Right.
would give them help at home. They can't do the state TBI program. So the traumatic brain injury at the state level is only for individuals with Medicaid, and they only take about 70 people at a time. And we estimate, so you've got these 5,000 new people every year, some of whom will resolve. I mean, a lot of that is individuals with concussion. They'll resolve. So,
Right.
but we estimate that there's people living, about 9,000 people in Vermont living with brain injury.
And has anybody gone to the legislature and begged?
Yes.
I am very
Yeah.
surprised that this legislature or any of our legislators hasn't done anything.
That's
because
funding.
they're usually pretty compassionate.
Yeah, I know. We have a fund that the legislature passed a TBI fund, but no money's been put into it for, I don't know how many years now. But
Wow.
so the Brain Injury Association raises money through things like our walk for thought. Or
Right.
This year it'll be the walk and roll for brain injury. It'll be here in Montpelier. The conference that we hold once
Right.
a year, and grants. Our concussion work is pretty much from a foundation grant. So there's those
Because if there
kinds.
is hope, as we talked
Yeah.
about, that's money well spent, because maybe these people with the right support will be fully functioning,
Yeah.
whatever that means, in a couple of years, or,
Or
you know.
at least functioning as best
yeah.
as possible.
right.
Maybe, rather than going down the rabbit hole
Yeah.
of anesthetizing themselves or alienating all the family members so they don't have a support system
Right.
anymore.
And especially since we're having now the big issue with opiates. And, I mean-
By the way, drug overdoses cause brain injuries because
oh,
what
really?
happens
Well,
in the
the gray
process.
cells die, right?
Well, yes, because the lack of oxygen. So
Wow.
when someone overdoses, before they're brought back, there's a lack of oxygen to the brain, and so and it's called an
Stuff is-
anoxic brain injury.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
Yes, too
It's
much
like-
learning, Barbara. Too much. I'm on overload. That's really. I'm just blown away that our legislature hasn't done anything, because they
Yeah.
usually do.
Yeah.
So maybe the opioid, as bad as it is, maybe it'll bring some light onto this.
Yeah, it needs to be brought up more, the fact that the overdoses
Are you guys
causing-
allowed to lobby in the legislature? Is your organization?
We are a 501c3, which means we
But
can't do
right.
lobbying.
Right.
We can do educating, and we do try to educate. And our executive director is actually a legislator. So,
Oh,
but
who's that?
Trevor Squirrel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but he's on the environment committee.
Oh, they know how to move around.
Yeah. So we've been in the legislature. There's just so many needs
Yeah.
in Vermont.
Well, I know, but
And
this has got a potential end to it. It's not that
Well-
you're, or end to the extent possible, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
To make them be as self-sustaining as they can.
Right. I
And-
mean,
and-
the Voc Rehab is wonderful.
Well,
by the
that's
way.
true. Yeah,
I
they
would
are.
encourage anybody to connect with, and we do
Right.
all the time, connect with Voc
Yep.
Rehab.
They're great. So I think have we finished these? I interrupted you when you went down the list, and then I started talking about this, because I think people should know this isn't supported as well as it could be.
Right. One of the other pieces that is really important, and one of the other pieces is that our correctional systems are filled with individuals with brain injury. The state of Vermont just got a federal grant working with Department of Corrections and us to try to figure out how many of our individuals who are involved in the justice system, how many of them have undiagnosed brain injuries, because those
Wow.
numbers are huge of undiagnosed people who haven't come forward.
Well, a lot of those people are in jail because of the traumatic childhood,
Yes.
and that would be a logical
Yeah.
nexus, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Or they've had a motor vehicle accident.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it will be fascinating to go through that process with the Department of Corrections. Yeah.
Anyway, Barb, we have just a few minutes
Yes.
left. What's the message for people listening before they meet Mirabai? I mean, it's about hope, but what do they need to know? I would love them to get a copy of this paper, and I hope that they do that.
Yeah. Contact the Brain Injury Association if you have questions. I just want people to recognize the fact that if you probably know people
Right?
that have a brain injury that you just never really thought about. Every time I teach a class, it seems like somebody comes forward and go,
Right.
I didn't realize I have a brain injury, because it gets classified as something else.
Right. Do strokes lead to brain injury?
Strokes are a brain injury.
Oh, well, there's
It
my
is,
answer.
yeah.
Really? Because that's more common in most people, like somebody you know has had a stroke, and that's a brain injury.
That is an
Well,
acquired
sure,
brain
because it
injury.
just turns
Yeah.
off the blood supply.
Yep, you got it. So if you just be patient with people, have hope, and give them support. people lose their support system. Everybody's there for the initial injury.
Right, of course.
They're all at the hospital.
Right.
They're all for the
Right.
first few weeks, maybe first months. And then it's like they go back to their lives and they tend to forget that individual. And then the individual might be walking, talking, and sounding fine.
Right, and
But
they're
they're
not.
struggling. And so to have patience with people and to really try to keep connected with them.
Right. Now, I know there was a thing about don't confuse hope for denial, and you and I were
Mm.
talking about some of these folks don't want to accept
Yeah.
help necessarily because I can do this.
Yeah.
And, you know, like wearing, like using a cane or a walker or something. And I was surprised at that because that might help.
I know. A lot of people just don't want to admit they have a brain injury for a
Right.
variety of reasons. And it could be that part of their brain that can think that through,
Sure.
that problem-solving part of the brain
Right.
that says, well, I can't do this because.
Well, it's not something you can see either. I mean, you
Yeah,
can fix an
yeah.
arm or a leg or something,
Yeah.
but this is a little, I think the brain's a mystery to all of us anyway, right?
It is, and we are learning all the time. Some of the stuff that I said today will be turned on its head in 5 years,
That's
whatever.
great. Well, that's great,
That's
right?
just,
Yeah,
that is.
Barbara, it has been a delight to
Thank
meet you and
you.
have you on the show. And if
Thanks.
there's anything new, just come on back because I
Okay.
find this very interesting.
It's an amazing topic.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very
here.
much. And now just 2 seconds and we'll be back with Mirabai. So I hope you enjoyed listening to Barbara Winters. I know that I learned a lot about brain injury, and it's now my pleasure. Eric LaMontagne has joined us. Eric, welcome.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Eric is co-host and also the executive director for Campaign for Vermont. And our special guest, as I mentioned before, is Mira Isaac, who is a TBI survivor herself. And after her car accident that she had back in 1993,
September.
and after a very long recovery, I met her. I was Deputy Commissioner of Education, and she did a lot of talking to high school students about her experience. So we'll let her talk about that in a second.
Sure. When I was 17, life was free and easy. You know, I'd been graduated from high school for a year and a half, and I was working as a cashier in landscaping in the summer, and so I had my first car as well. And life was just going along in a merry way, and I didn't have any reason to take much responsibility or even consider the advice of slowing down, you know. I hadn't had to slow down yet in this life, so now that I'm behind the wheel, it doesn't apply to me anyway,
Right.
right?
And that was a new car you were driving, correct?
No. This was an 82 Corolla, Toyota Corolla. So it wasn't so new, but it was new to me, and it was liberating and exciting to be able to do my own thing, you know. But then one evening, I was going a little too fast in the middle of the night.
Right.
Headed home 1 o'clock at night, and I came around the corner in Marshfield, and I believe what happened is I swerved to miss a deer, and I took a tree instead.
Right.
And then I was crunched in the car for 5 or 6 hours before anyone found me.
Wow.
So my mother believes it was a lack of oxygen that I was suffering,
Right.
as well as a traumatic brain injury.
So they
Right,
found
I
you
was-
and you were in the hospital
was-
in a coma, correct?
Yeah, I was comatose for roughly 2.5 months,
Wow.
and I imagine they held on to me a month or so longer for physical therapy and, you know, the beginnings of all the rehabilitations of occupational therapy, speech therapy every day.
And that was about 25 years ago?
Yeah,
Yeah.
September of '93.
Oh, bet you remember that date, huh? I know you told me, we're going back that you had an accident before that and kind of felt invincible, I think was the word you used.
Right,
So,
yeah. Because just a year before that, I had graduated from high school, and I was so thrilled to get out of school. You know, it was like prison to me. and I had worked all year, and so I bought my first 85 Honda, or some year, Honda Civic from some guy on Route 2. And I had a red hot Honda Civic with a sunroof and a stereo. And so I'm on my way driving myself and my friends to our first get together after graduation, and just blazed around the outside of a corner on a dirt road, you know, spun out on the gravel and rolled the car over a boulder.
well, but everybody was okay.
And my friend flew out her window on the boulder that we were rolling over, split her head open.
Wow.
And I flew out my window and just rolled through a somersault and jumped up and thought, better, you know. I didn't quite know what to do, but some
She used
friends,
the word invincible after that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
she was fine.
So, but I was fine after that, so I didn't even consider, maybe I should slow down a little
Right,
bit and,
right.
you know,
So
do
anyway,
things
I
a little
I
more
stuck your question.
consciously. But yeah.
Well, let's talk about your road to recovery a little bit, and you clearly have come out of this with a fairly hopeful and positive attitude, and let's talk a little bit about what that road to recovery looked like, and maybe the point where you decided that there was hope to have in this situation.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, when you comatose, or when I was comatose, I mean, every situation is very individual and very different. But I do remember being in the hospital bed in a position where I could do nothing for myself. Couldn't even speak. I mean, eventually the words started coming out, but I wasn't able to do anything at first, and so I don't remember not being without, you know, never not having hope, because once I was able to connect with my family and stuff, and just able to do minor things for myself around the house and stuff. It was exciting, and I was full of hope that, whoa, this is groovy. I'm getting better. Things are coming back. And
Well, you said something to me when we were talking before the show about how it was just so interesting and exciting for you to feel yourself. You know, I think you described it as things reconnecting in your brain that hadn't been connected, and how exciting it is for you to feel those developments.
Yeah, I could feel the reconnections taking place. And it didn't just take place, you know, it comes with a lot of effort and a lot of focus.
Yeah, but you also had a lot of support from your family,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So how did you meet Carol Rose and start to talk to high school kids? I never knew
Because
how you made that connection.
Because she initially got my name because of a donation can that was around town when I was comatose.
Right.
And so it wasn't until 1995, but she ended up calling me one day and inviting me to speak on the Vermonters Impact Panel, which was comprised of people like who had lost husbands and sons and or had injured themselves in an accident.
Interesting.
And so we started speaking at GYLC conferences, you know, Governor's Youth Leadership Conference.
Right.
And there was some teacher conference that I used to speak at Leguins.
Oh, nice.
And
So
yeah.
what do you think that when you talk to the kids, did they understand your message, and did you get any feedback from them about what listening to you meant to them? Did they get what you were trying to say, or were they teenagers?
Yeah. No, I did. And I would end every session and I would say, hey, why don't you suggest to your teacher that I mean, if you go home tonight and write me a letter about what this talk has meant to you, and then bring it to your teacher, I bet they'll give you extra credit.
Oh, there you go.
And so I got a mess of letters,
Oh, nice.
and I saved every one of them.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yep, and I trimmed them down, and I made little.
Did any of those? Do you
Well-
remember what any of those? Did any of them stick out?
Yeah, several of them would say things like, next time we were at a party, you know, and we had had a little too much to drink or something, we looked at each other and we said, huh, what would Mirabai do?
Wow. What a great impact.
And so they remembered the wreck that I went through, and they said, we better call Mom, or
Right.
we better just sleep here on the couch, you
Right.
know.
Well, that's the truth,
And
right?
then
parents?
not
Oh,
take
for
the
sure.
chance, don't
I
take
don't know
the
how many
chance.
parties when my daughter was in high school that I was on the phone, and the deal was if the kid called, you don't ask any
Yeah.
questions,
Yep.
you
Right.
just
That
pick them
was-
up and
Right,
drop them off.
right.
Yep.
My only rule was do not get sick in my car and we'll be fine, thank you very much.
Yeah.
No getting sick. But that's a good message. You realize what
Yeah.
you've done for those kids. It's powerful.
I hope so.
It's powerful. Have you done any speaking since then, or I have to stop?
No, you know what happened is
Sorry.
I got married and my life got very sidetracked, and we did wonderful, adventurous things together. And I continued speaking at one, like, camp out place in
Yeah.
northern Vermont,
Oh, nice.
where a group of teenagers would come to this cabin and spend the weekend there, and I would go up there and speak. But no, I haven't really done
No,
enough
too
speaking
bad.
in years.
Yeah, because I think.
But I still am capable of it, and I had like, I don't have the slides anymore, like on a slide projector
Right.
where I click through them one by one by one by one. I have them all on a disc.
Good. Oh, see, modern. This is
And
good.
so, right, and so if anyone wants to call me, I'm available, and I don't have the disc with me this
That's
year,
great.
but somehow I'd like to extend myself out there, because,
Well, yeah, because
you know, with these wars recently, the number one injury
Mhm.
is TBI.
right on the
And
veterans.
I know just how it is to transition from being a perfect, strong, capable person to living with a 24-hour headache,
Right. Ah.
and just
Yep.
puts kind of a
Very good.
damper on
Yeah.
life, you know.
Well, you don't look like you have much of a damper on life. You're always smiling and always uplifting to me.
Yeah.
I love having lunch with her and hanging out with her. She's makes me feel great.
Well, and we need positivity
Yes, we do.
in this world.
We do.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about the role of family in your recovery and in this road you're on. Specifically your mother. I know your mother's been a very vital part of your life.
My mother is my best friend,
Yeah.
and she has just stood by me and accepted me through all the, I mean, I went through a lot of, I went through all the growing up stages again. I went through the terrible twos when I was like 18, 19 years old. And so just imagine me throwing a temper tantrum by your side, and she just wouldn't react and respond to it. She just knew that this was part of my development. And so she
I
was,
never understood that.
she
So
supported me and was there when I wanted to,
when you came out of your coma, you were really back-
starting over
Yeah,
again. Yeah, I
that's-
couldn't walk. I couldn't even go to, you know,
Wow.
Didn't
Look where
cook.
you've come. You've come a long way.
I still don't cook for myself.
Oh, don't worry about it. A lot of people don't. They order. That's what telephone reservations are for.
I know, and the Uber Eats now,
Yes,
they'll drive it right
That's
over.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
So,
Oh, so my mother, so my mom
excuse me.
was there in the beginning. I mean, first she was by my side in the coma, and then she was holding my hand through all those funky growing stages again. And when I wanted to, I tried to volunteer, and and went to college and stuff, and she was there to support me, and always just a phone call away.
Great. And the first, what'd you say, first massage, what's the word? I don't know, your mom's job here was the first
Masseuse.
masseuse in
Central Vermont.
in central Vermont.
In the mid
So there
70s.
you go.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, traveling. Here you have you're quite a traveler. Mexico, Las
I
Vegas.
don't have any money, but I make my way around the world a bit.
Well, tell us about Mexico, and then maybe we can talk about Vegas. a
I
little
just
bit.
love the sunshine, and I grew up here in Vermont, and I'm strong and hardy and know how I can get through winter after winter and gray day after gray day. But I have much more fun and much more spirit to live when I'm in the sun.
Yeah, when you don't have to spend 20
Yeah.
minutes putting
Yeah,
on
right,
clothes just to go outside.
Exactly. And you don't have to live in 8 layers. And yeah.
Yeah, we can relate to that.
Yeah. So I spend time in Mexico, and I also love to learn foreign languages. So I'm still studying Spanish and increasing my vocabulary
For me, for you.
as much as I can, but I still have a teenage attitude, and I don't study quite as much as I should.
Well, I mean, they say that the quickest way to learn a language is cultural immersion,
Yeah, immersion,
right?
right? Just
So
jump right in.
it's you have to go sit
It's
on that
true.
beach in Mexico. It's
true.
about learning the language.
Or no, I also have regular Mexican friends, who just live in the village and who I go over and have dinner with. And the funnest thing in the world, I taught them to play cards last year.
Oh, really?
And we were playing a game, and they didn't quite, I don't know, and I misspoke about a direction or something, and so they started calling me a tramposa.
What is that?
What is that?
This is not good.
Is that what? That's one to look up later.
Yeah, right.
No, it just
Card
means
shark.
it's a cheater.
Oh, cheater. Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Oh, great.
but
What's the word in Mexican? What is it?
tramposa.
Tramposa. Remember that, tramposa. great.
And you have a home in Vegas.
Yeah, because I was married for 12 years in Vermont, and my husband was a gambler on the computer. And so we moved out to the sunshine in Vegas, and we landed in a senior community. So we were close enough to the casino so he could do that, but far enough from the danger so he would feel safe with me.
And you
doing
still
my
and you
own
were still
thing.
in the sunshine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm seeing a
Yeah.
theme here.
Well, I know exactly. And she lives in a senior home, and her husband has since passed away.
Yeah.
But she's going back and living in that, and it's a wonderful community for her because
Yeah, I do.
everybody takes care of her, I think. Right?
No,
Everyone
it's
watches
not
after
that.
you.
No, it's all not that. We all live very independent
Oh.
lives, and there's ceramics, glass
Yeah, right.
fusing, jewelry, a range of things we can do. And I
That's
have a
good.
writer's workshop every Saturday, and it's just small. It's like Vermont,
Yeah, right,
small town
small.
living,
That's
And
great.
you said that you're headed back there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
In
she lives with her
January,
mom here.
probably.
And is it East Montpelier? East
Yeah, but that's where I grew up too. But
Right.
we've sold our house.
Yes, they just sold the house and they're moving.
But we're
in.
keeping 13 acres,
Yeah.
and so we're actually setting up and having a shed delivered.
Yeah, so they have a place in the summer to come
Yeah.
back to.
Yeah.
Summers in Vermont are nice.
Summers
Yeah.
in Vermont, right?
Summers in Vermont can
Well,
be
they've got a beautiful.
either perfect or gray.
And true.
They've got
But
a
we love
beautiful
Vermont.
land.
Our heart's in Vermont. I grew up here.
So you
And
wanted,
and I wanted to also mention how the entire community of Montpelier is part of what gave me the strength and the fortitude to come back and get through all those phases
Right.
again.
Right.
Because, I would just clobber down the hill or walk as gracefully as I could down the hill, But I was using a cane in those days, every pair of eyes that passed me on the street was just full of compassion and love
Right.
and kindness and spirit and friendship.
That is Vermont, and I was
Yeah.
telling Barbara before, I'm
Yeah.
very surprised about the benefits that the legislature hasn't done something about extending the benefits because there is hope that you will get better, as you have already, and you could get to a higher level of independence if you've given the support. I'm just
And-
surprised they
and-
don't do that. I'm getting
And do you
upset
know,
about it.
do you know that I also achieved a bachelor's degree?
Did you?
Yeah.
Excellent. From what
And
school did
so-
you go?
Next time, when I
PhD.
narrow down a master's, I'll
There
go
you
for a
go.
master's. But no, I got a bachelor's in general studies
Good job.
in True
Yeah.
Johnson State College.
Oh, Johnson, that's
That's
excellent.
where I graduated.
Did you have
yeah.
Bill Doyle for a professor?
No, but I had a picture of Bill and I in the newspaper
Oh, really?
at a Mountaineers game.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, Mirabai is very active. She's all over the place. But I think your message of hope, and I think in the time that we have left, if you can just talk to people about the importance of having hope.
Hope is a very tough thing to reach for, I think, when you have a TBI, because doctors don't have any predictions to make, and parents don't have any idea what you're going to be able to regain or what you should even reach for and stuff. And so I believe that hope is always available. And if you believe in yourself, there's reason to hope
Very
for
good.
more. Because your lungs are breathing, you're waking every day, and
Nice.
keep on keeping on.
Keep on trucking. There you
Yeah.
go. And
for
that's
sure.
a headline to happen, right? That's excellent.
For
And
sure.
you were talking about getting something, volunteering for something to do, and I honestly think if you went out to Vegas and worked with veterans and they saw your spirit and what you've been able to do, they'd feel the hope too. Because you're right, that's one of the top injuries that our soldiers
Yeah.
are facing these days.
Yeah.
That's
Primary, and I've totally put myself in their shoes and think, oh gosh, because in the very beginning you know you're waking every day and you're taking the challenge of each day on, but you don't have any idea what's really coming.
Right, you don't.
And so I just want everyone to know that it's right for you to believe in yourself. If your heart is beating, you have the capacity to regain, redevelop many
That's
things.
great. That's great. So you're mastering Spanish? I didn't even know. There's things I'm learning about you,
Sí,
Mirabai. I didn't
¿conoces
know.
español, Pet?
Sí.
Sí.
Sí, that's it.
Muy bien. ¿Dónde quisieras viajar?
Oh, see, there you go. What did you just ask?
Where do you want to travel?
Oh, there you go. Where do you go in Mexico? Is there a special
Cerca
town?
de Puerto Vallarta.
Oh, Puerto Vallarta.
Sí, en media hora de Puerto Vallarta. Es un pueblo se llama La Cruz de Guanacaxtla. La
Right.
Cruz de Guanacaxtla. It's a fishing village.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
That's
with
great.
a marina. And
Oh.
so there's hundreds of sailors from Canada and
Oh, it's a port
California,
for
yeah.
them to dock. and
Yeah.
so-
Oh wow.
Nice. That must be a
Yeah.
very active town.
no.
So you're going there in a couple of days, December or something?
December 5th.
December 5th. Very nice.
And yeah.
That's great. Well, we
And I have
really-
a Spanish teacher down there and everything.
That's great.
So hopefully I'm gonna.
And we like the food, sort of. I asked her if she liked the food, and she was a little hesitant. I'm not sure it's her favorite.
No, it's not fancy food, but it's basics,
Right.
good food. A
Right.
plate of beans
Right.
and some salad
You
Well,
all
and if
set?
you're near
and
a fishing-
papaya.
You need, yeah.
Probably
What
a lot
more
of
do I
fish.
need than papaya?
Oh, really?
Oh my gosh, fresh tuna fish. off a heap of fresh tuna off the boat.
I would like it then.
It's
Oh.
fabulous.
What the folks watching don't realize is we're recording this right at about 5:30,
Yeah, right,
6
we're all
o'clock,
hungry.
and we're talking about fresh.
We're all hungry. Well, there's nothing like right off the boat.
No, there's not.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Well,
and
we-
you can pick which one you want out of
Oh,
a
really?
pile of the same
Oh, because
fish.
you go down to meet the boats.
No, it all comes in and it's in a
Oh, like a
barn,
farmer's market.
like
sort
a
of thing?
barn type
Yeah.
thing.
Good job.
Yeah,
Well, thank you very much for coming on the
Of
show.
course, Pat. I would be happy to do this anytime.
Anytime. Well, anytime you come back, we're here.
Sure.
So, any other questions?
No, just thank you so much, and I really appreciate getting to know you and you sharing your story, because it's to share a story like that takes a lot of bravery, and hopefully there's some folks out around here that might be watching this and might see this and be
Yeah, right,
inspired
right.
and get that if they're going through a darker time, be able to listen to your words of wisdom and
Right.
find some hope in a situation that is.
And I was really impressed with what you said, the high school kids said. I mean, do you realize what an impact you had? That's just amazing to have that moment where you share that with kids and reach them at 17.
Yeah.
That's tough in itself to
And
do.
I think the pictures were powerful enough so that they'll remember me.
Are you going to share some of the pictures with us? Eric said you had some pictures that you would let us share on the video.
Yeah. I'm going to do my best.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in. I
Thank you
know
very
you
much,
enjoyed
Eric.
this show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mirabai. Thank you, Eric. And we'll see you next week. In the meantime, keep listening beyond the sound bites.